Hello and welcome to the Film Ireland podcast, where we delve into the stories, talent and creativity behind the Irish screen industries. In today's episode, we're joined by director Alessandra Celesia. We'll be discussing her powerful documentary which explores the depths of trauma in the community of Belfast's New Lodge. So the Flats hit cinemas this weekend, but first have a listen to the trailer here.
Oh, Father, why are you so sad on this bright Easter morn, when Irishmen are proud and glad of a land where they were born?
So what are we then? Nothing. How are we Irish if we have a British passport?
But you can be British
And
or
then we're
Irish.
not allowed
I
in.
have an
We're not allowed
Irish
in.
passport.
Don't know why I'm British
Now
or
you know
Irish.
you're
Now you
fully
tell me I'm Irish.
Fully Irish. You were born on this island, the island of Ireland.
I threw my first fucking petrol phone when I was 9.5. 9.5. I didn't ask to fucking hear to be out there fucking hijacking and petrol bombing, and this was forced on us.
One thing I want rid of in my life is the pain and the hurt and the men that have hurt me.
That's three things.
But I got it into one fucking sentence. Try and transplant me, I will not be moved. Try and poison me, I will not shrivel.
How do you think you can be helped?
Criminal, I am sick, infestation. Pull me out, pull me out, pull me out.
The fields will be the laughter of our children. It's coming true.
Thank you so much for chatting with us.
Thank you.
This is just such a beautiful and complex and powerful film, and I really want to dig into the meat and bones of it. But I think how you've come to the subject matter and your journey as an artist is really interesting. So I was wondering if you could kind of take me back to moving from theatre and performance into filmmaking and then Northern Ireland, and like if you can kind of even tell me that as the story, because I think it's so fascinating.
Well, as you can hear, my accent is not exactly from Belfast. So I arrived in Belfast in 97 because I got married with a guy from Belfast. And that's how this sort of a love story with the town started for me. And yes, I came here and I was only doing theater. I did theater until I was 30 and I trained in theater, didn't train in films. And it was just it was actually one summer where I was pregnant with my daughter and I couldn't tour. So I said, "Oh, I'm going to make a film with some friends, as a little filling the time." And in fact, I adored it, and it was something that immediately I felt attracted to just people's stories, like documentaries and people's stories, and be allowed to be nosy when you have a camera in your hands. And it was such an incredible experience. And then that's how it started. And Belfast actually was very important for me because I did in 2011 a film that was a sort of a turning point where I understood artistically a lot of things, and also it had quite a success, so it was presented everywhere in the world, and it's called The Bookseller of Belfast. And it was the first approach with the town, trying to understand this place where I started to settle, without knowing that much. And then the flats arrived years later because I thought when I arrived, there's no need for another film about the Troubles. We had enough films about the Troubles. And so I kept my promise for 25 years. But recently I started to feel that there was still like the long-term consequences of the war that don't stop when the war stops. So I just felt, oh, actually, it's the time to film and capture these long consequences before that generation is gone.
And that's it, I suppose. And I think what you do so well is the fallout of that and the different people it impacts and the different ways is so beautiful. I would still just before we go in is maybe talk about your role as a performer as well, and does that maybe lend itself to, like embodying a character and the process that you bring into the flats in terms of how trauma is stored in the body, how it kind of manifests. Do you think that's something that maybe it was maybe not even just your perspective as a filmmaker, but in as an actor and a theater actor specifically?
Well, I think you're right. I think these skills that you learn while you're, using your body to perform somehow allows you to understand how you're going to help someone that is not an actor, that is it's his real life, how you're going to help him to go through a process that involves his body so much. And you do realize that trauma is stuck somewhere in those bodies, and you choose those bodies because they're traumatized somehow, because they have a way of moving, or the skin or everything tells you a story already, just when you look at these people. And so how do you help them to do something with that? And yes, I do think, because I've been through the process myself, I was probably less scared to lead some other people in this direction, and use reenactment to like recall the memories of a lifetime. And I think what was helping me is that in Belfast there is a strong tradition of amateur political theatre that was always a way to allow the communities to represent themselves instead and be represented by the medias that sometimes didn't represent them in the right way. So I think they belong somehow, they had that tradition behind them even without knowing. So I do think it was a meeting between the right forces to go through that process together.
And talk to me a little bit about sort of the early stages. So you were saying, the kind of flats came to you a couple of years ago. Talk to me about like how your creative process works in terms of developing and workshopping those ideas. Like, do you put it down on a page and look for development funding? Is it something that you just go out and start to do because it's such a tactile type of directing?
Well, there's so many steps, in this process, and it took 7 years. I mean, I was doing other things, but I kept coming back for 7 years in that place. And one important phase for me, the most important, is this staying there, being there, just spend time with the people, get accepted and get to know them deeply, because then the writing will come out of what you really know. So there is maybe quite soon you write a script that is for getting money to make the film, and that script, fun enough, I was reading it a few weeks ago again, and it has had the core of what I wanted to do in it, but obviously it's such a different story, from what it ended up being, because then you enter the second phase, and for me, as you say, it's tactile. It's really having to uh, improvise with reality, because you're dealing with real stories and real people's emotions, and so you want to preserve them, and you want to grab those emotions in the purest way. And so you cannot just go with your brain and what you wrote on your piece of paper. I wrote a lot, a lot of notes and a lot of hopes of what I would like that to be, but then it's just in the practical act of filming, that's when you really start the writing of the film. So in this case, for example, maybe we would do a scene of reenactment, and that would work really, really well. And then we were like, oh, then we can go to another scene, another stage of this process, mental process, because the first one worked. So you were building on constantly on what you had and what you were able to have.
And in terms of finding Joe, because he's such a kind of beautiful soul in terms of how honest he is, and watching him go through that process it's heartbreaking, like it really is, because he is so emotionally raw, and working with him and finding him, and what was that like?
When I found him, I was like, oh, I found the film, because I knew I wanted a man of that generation, but it's very difficult for Belfast men to be honest and to not to be honest, but like to speak about openly about things, personal things. They like trying to make jokes and just everyone else seems to have a worse story than they have. And Joe somehow had that in himself. He had that child that never went away. It was still there, and you could still see it, that pure kind of soul. Um, and I thought, oh, he's going to be able to represent that generation and show the scars without being afraid. And obviously, all my work was just to work with him in a creative process, so that showing those scars wasn't too painful, but it became for him like a way to get them out of the system, to get them out there, and maybe make justice to the story of his uncle, for example, who was killed when he was a child, and that was his big trauma. So help him to go through that process, that is an artistic process that he could understand, because he has a very artistic side in himself. And so together, to be able to build something that was going to make his pain a little bit less painful somehow.
In those moments as well, and I think even bringing in his neighbors to reenact it, like those very intimate moments with him and his family, you do just get this as just a human experience that everyone has lived through, and that, yeah, like, was there anything in that that really surprised you? But it's like it's so powerful, and it's so sort of quiet and thoughtful. Was there anything in that that really surprised you as you were going through it?
What surprised me, it's how immense they are, like in the way they express things. They're like actors of their own life, and huge, immense actors. So that was a surprise, in a way, like and was because they were like that we were able to keep going. And it was also such a learning experience of how you need to allowed yourself to say, oh, I might fail. I don't have an exact plan, because the plan is going to build with them, And if we accept that potential failure, then real beautiful things come out. And the other thing that maybe surprised me, well, I don't know if that surprised me, because I knew people in Belfast had that dark sense of humor, but how they were able to deal with tragic and comic at the same time. They're so incredibly fun in the film, and yet we're talking about very dark subjects. And I think that was a sparkle of light in the darkness that was deeply needed, so that the film didn't become like a social experiment, but they had that light at the end of the tunnel, that I think it's there in the film, and that makes completely bearable for the spectator to enter their stories, because with their sense of humor, they are not losing, they're still standing. And so I thought that was the beautiful thing that I was blessed with,
Yeah, and even in terms of women and the women around, and I think you follow one younger woman as she sort of processes a lot through creativity and art, and in a way this is what this is doing as well. I know you were kind of saying that there's a lot that is figured out, like as this is happening, because you do have to go with the flow. But was there always a point you were hoping to get through, and that the material would bring you through in, like, from those early stages? And did you kind of stay on track as you were going along, or did it maybe go in a direction again that you weren't fully thinking it might?
I think I had in mind that I didn't want to stick to a real life close, 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 close. I don't know how to express that, but I felt that we need to lift the whole thing towards poetry and something that had a bit of theatrical fiction in it, so that we could make it bearable, like so that it would be a beautiful object and not just something really dark, that where you are looking at like insects from very close and how much they suffer. I think Belfast had enough of those documentaries like that are showing real life. I knew I wanted with them, if possible, to create something that was a little bit crazier, a little bit more poetic. And you were talking about Jolene, this young woman that I met. Actually, I filmed her in the bookshelf of Belfast in 2011. So I was very happy that she accepted to be a part of this film. And with her, she's a beautiful singer, but she always sang, huge covers or like someone else's songs. And the bet with her at this time was like, should we try to write the songs that you need to express what you want to express? So I was helped a lot by the composer that is Brian Irvine, that is brilliant, and he helped me to help Jolene to get into the process to write the songs internally from the film and to sing them in the scenes. So it's to say that yes, I had some hopes, and those hopes were like granted to me. I arrived at where I wanted, maybe in a different path, maybe in a different way, but some things were there since the beginning. And for example, with her, it was this song that you see at the end with the beautiful choir. It becomes huge. At the beginning, it was just me and her going along the street in New Lodge and seeing some weeds coming out of concrete and thinking, oh my God, those weeds are so resilient. They are what people in New Lodge are. Why don't we try to write a song about that? So it starts from a little thing, and then you lead your idea to get to a form that sometimes is so much bigger.
And in terms of like raising the technical elements of this, do you know, like getting the support to shoot it, to film it, was that an easy process?
Nothing was easy.
No, nothing's ever easy.
Nothing
Yeah.
was easy. I think the thing that kept me going was the warmth and the faith that the characters had in me. Like I always felt they were on board. And yes, sometimes they were annoyed and I was annoying them, and maybe I had to leave them in peace for a couple of days, but they were always there. Also, I was lucky enough to have very good producers who were really there for me. So they built a good team around me. And I have to say, I had the best female assistant, Fionnuala McCormack. I have to say, without her, probably the film would not exist. So because she was there at every step to make sure that we were on the right path, and so yes, I had a lot of positive energy around me, but of course for me and for the characters, it was never easy because we were digging into something that was emotionally very strong. So we had to do it little by little, and sometimes we were like, oh, we went too far, we need to do a step backwards. But I suppose once we started to shoot, it was hard, but it flowed. It was more all the preparation that it was a bit source of anxiety because sometimes you're like, well, how I'm going to do this, how I'm going to put it together. And I realized with time and experience that if you don't feel that you're on the verge of failing, sometimes you're not on the good path somehow.
Of course. And in terms of, again, like editing and putting it together, was this something, because yeah, it's so much of a process and it's sort of something that evolves, and there's organic things that you just have to kind of sit around and wait for them to manifest in a way. But are you editing as you're going? Is it something like you're leaving it all there and you're kind of hoping what you saw in the days is going to be captured in the way that you want? Or is it something that you're molding as you're going along?
For this film, we did a very specific process. We were shooting for 2 weeks, and then we were stopping for 2 weeks. And the first week, I would look at the images with my editor, and just look, not edit, but just look and talk about it, so that we could understand. Yes, this is working. This is not really working. If we wanted to go there, maybe we should do there. So it was just like nearly writing in the editing room. And then the second week off, me and Fanula, we would go around and just find the things that we needed for the next, maybe we need a caravan, we need we need the set, or we need these props, and just prepare for the next 2 weeks. So we did that for the whole summer. And that was really, really an interesting process, because we were already editing without even touching at the timeline, but it was editing and thinking, writing for the next step. And then you go and you catch what you can catch, and you come back and you're like, oh, this went like this and this went like this. So maybe we can go that way or that way. So the writing was always there. It's just a writing that it's not on marble, because you're dealing with reality. So if you had like a very, very, very precise writing, it would have been killing the object. But of course, you have what I call like dramatic lines, like big threads that you're trying to pull, and you're trying, when it's not happening, you're even trying to provoke, so that you're going in a certain direction. Then there are, of course, the things you didn't imagine that were going to happen, that happening, and there it's just with the editor was like, oh my god, we need to follow that. That's better than what we thought. So, and then I think the editing, that was really long, like 22 weeks.
Wow.
It was really, really long process, made what the film is now, that you look at it and you feel like, oh, it was well written. But I think the editing process was really trying to pull all those threads together. And also we had a lot of good material, so it was difficult to understand what we would let go. And in the editing process, we realized, oh, we need to have that big history beside the story of the individuals. We need to make it seen. And so that's when the archives started to come into the process. I always thought we would not have archives in this film, that we didn't need them. But at a certain point, it was clear that we needed that we need, when you talk about the violence, you need to see it. When you talk about certain heroes for your characters, you need to see them. And the editor had this great idea to color the archives in blue, like the ones that they were coming out of the TV that I had shot. And that made them more like a memory than archives. So they entered the film as nearly this subconscious memory of Joe, or of the community, with this blue color. So the editing, really, it was a very, very important part, where I was lost so many times, and it was good to have an editor with me.
Were there, like you were saying, that there's so much good content, and there was so much sort of powerful stuff that you had captured that you couldn't include. Was there any particularly difficult darlings that you had to kill to, when you were kind of shaping it up to be the final piece?
Yes, I suppose, you see, that reconstruction process led us to go really, really far. At some point, we were sort of taken by the fictional process, and so there were things that they were very beautiful, but they entered nearly another stage of what the film was going to be. Like they went into a completely fictional mood, where we all enjoyed to be there, but it was slightly leading us towards another film. So I had to let those go, and it was difficult. And even my team was like, I didn't put those scenes in the film. But it was necessary to stay on the raw side of things. And those things that were more written, in the end, they were more my my brain as a writer and as an author working around something, but they had less of that raw feeling of being inside their head and being with them, totally with them. So yes, those are the scenes that I had to let go, and they're on my hard disk, and sometimes I look at them, but I didn't use them.
Sharing it with subjects and even the community for the first time, was that something as well that was particularly nerve-wracking, or was it part of the process, in creating it?
Well, I mean, yes, it was nerve-wracking, as you say, because I'm not from Belfast, and I'm not from New Lodge. So I come from I'm an alien coming from space and meeting these people and deciding that I'm going to give them their story on screen, and so you really hope that you get it right. And also, I was a kind of a translator for their story for a wider audience that was maybe French people or Italian people, people who didn't know anything. So my biggest worry was how do you respect their story and still make it understandable outside? How do you make a film that is valuable for them and for the external world? And we did a first screening just with the 5 or 6 of the main characters before closing the editing, just to let them see and let them, if they had things to say, that was the time to say, I don't agree with that, or and it was beautiful to have that experience together because they recognize themselves and they let me know that, and so that was okay, if they're okay, then we can go with that. And then we had this huge screening in Belfast in Docks Ireland. It was a festival in Belfast, and we did the opening night with 500 people, and 250 they were from New Lodge. And so that was an experience, I tell you, because I had never probably had that an entire community comes and it's there to laugh and to react loudly and to cry as well. And then after the screening, there was a Q&A. So they were basically, the Q&A was more them sharing other stories and other experiences, as if this film provoked a need to talk,
One of the obstacles that you were facing in the beginning is that inability, and how creating the space for that just starts the conversation, which starts the process of healing for so many people.
Yes, it's funny because that's what Rita, who is the woman who Joe talks to in the film, and she's a befriender, and she's the one who leads them into depth of his feelings. And she said, funny enough, the camera and even the crew with their silence and with their listening, very careful, gave a kind of a safe space for Joe to tell things that he never told. And on a bigger scale, for the whole area, it was it is like an object that they use as a tool to communicate who they really are somehow, And for example, now that the film is going into the cinemas, they're my biggest PR. Is they're exploding internet, with their because they're proud of it, and I think they're proud of it because they feel it's true to them, and that was the biggest relief for me, and especially for me as a foreigner, that they feel this is our film.
I find it funny as well that you're married into the community, of the community, now blood in the community, there for 27 years. But that, I suppose it's just not something that you've lived, but it's something that you've experiencing the fallout probably every day, in a way that, not being of it, you can see it.
At the beginning, I was scared of this kind of outsider position, but in the end, I think yes, maybe it's. For example, I've never filmed a film in my own town, and I think it's because I'm too close to everyone. I wouldn't dare to say certain things. I wouldn't dare to go in certain places because then I'm a little bit scared of what my friends will think, or when you look of something from and you're completely free to really look at that thing. What you need is it's the fully understanding that of course you will never have, but like be there enough to go deep. But you're free as well. And maybe the people that I filmed, that's what they said. They were like joking at me, saying, "Oh, you're the mad Italian journalist. We can talk to you because you don't know anything." It was maybe liberating that I was coming from another perspective, and also I think very soon they felt my perspective was only the internal wounds of people, and it was not the politics of it. And of course, the politics are what caused the internal wounds, so we see them. But I didn't have in mind at all, and I hope this is not a political film. It's political only because it relates to like individual stories. And I think once they felt that there was nothing political about it, they felt really, really free.
This has won, was it Best Film at the CPH Docs Festival in Copenhagen, the George Morrison Feature Documentary Award from IFTA. It's done very, very well on that festival circuit, and those are pretty nice accolades. I'm sure there's more since I got that bio. What has the reception been like then when you bring it to other spaces? Do people get it?
Well, I think so. Like, it went really well everywhere. I think it's also unfortunately a right time in history or to show this story. Like when I started to think it was important to talk about the long-term consequences of trauma after a war. I didn't realize the film was going to come out in a moment where wars are so horribly present in our life, and where we see so many people suffering, and so I think there is this aspect of being able to relate to a war that is behind. It's finished. There is a perspective in time, and yet it's so sore. So I think that's what the people come out with from the film. It's like, oh my God, what is going to happen with the actual conflicts? How long they're going to last after they finish, if one day they finish, So I think somehow the film arrived in an era that was ready to fully engage with the actual, the still very actual matter. It's not something in the past. So there is that, and then there is the fact that these characters are just amazing. Like I've been blessed with amazing people. So everybody loves Joe. Everybody loves Rita and Angie and Jolene and Sean. Like they're really so bigger than life, and that's what I adore probably in Belfast, and that's maybe what gives me, being an outsider, I see people for me as bigger than themselves. They have an incredible way of expression, an incredible way of saying things. And when I'm at home, it's just normal to me. When I see people in the streets, maybe someone from Northern Ireland will think, oh, they're bigger than life. For me, they're bigger than life here, And I think people abroad that do see them that way.
And what do you hope, maybe people that even might not understand fully what it means, what would you hope people get from watching this film?
I think the deep reason why I made the film is because I was amazed to see how people that went through so much, they're still standing somehow. They're fragile, they're maybe not completely well, but they're still standing. And this is the quest of nearly every film that I've made, and it comes from very personal stories where I'm always amazed how people can still be in life, relate to life, enjoy life after they went through so much. So I hope in the end that's really what people get out of it. They might forget it's about a conflict in Northern Ireland. They might forget where they were in a Republican area and not in a Protestant area. But that's not the core of the film. It's people who are wounded. How do they keep staying in life, and with a bit of sense of humor as well. So I hope that's what the people get.
Amazing. And yeah, that Northern Irish wit, it's so there, and it does, like, it's just, it relieves that tension. I suppose that's what it was designed or evolved to do, is just give people like that moment of reprieve. And in terms of, as a filmmaker, tackling something this weighty, I suppose maybe you finished it a long time ago, and are you ready to move on to something else? Would you like to take a step back, or a step sideways, or explore something completely different for a while, or is this something that you feel needs to be dug into more?
Um, I think I had a year now that I meant to write something, but I'm not. I think in the end I had to wash my soul, like it was a lot, it was a lot, and I finished nearly another film nearly at the same time, so it was like you need time to leave before you can start again. I think the film gave me the need to try to go towards fiction more. Like they helped me to, but they helped me to understand that for me, fiction is maybe not bringing famous actors to play, but it is to make fiction with like real people. So maybe that's where I'm trying to move next. But there is probably a story that I still would like to dig in, because it's part of the rushes that I didn't use. And it's the very, very young generation, the 13, 14 years old, that in New Lodge are like still dealing with some of the long-term consequences, but also they're like looking for a new life completely. And so now I'm trying probably to work with them, because when I filmed them for this film, I didn't know them enough. I didn't have. I found them very late in the process of the film, and so I couldn't make justice to them, and so I decided not to have them in the film. But they're amazing, so I'm hoping now, little by little, to move towards a film with them.
Well, we can't wait to see it. And this is something that's so powerful and beautiful and thoughtful, and yeah, probably timely. And I think there is that sense of hope.
Well, I'm glad that you say that. I think there is obviously. I think when people show the best of their soul, as well as the worst of their soul, but you cannot not say that there is hope. And I think Joe has that in mind very clearly. He's very is looking at the new generation. He's looking at Sean, who is the child, who represents him as a child, and he's very proud of all the achievements that Sean has. And you can feel that in the film, that is there for the next generation. It's in the hands of the next generation. So yeah, there is a complete bright future in front. And I hope, like, because I said that 25 years ago, and then I did a film about that, but I hope now it's really moving towards another new moment of the history of Northern Ireland. Things are changing so much, and there is really a bright future. It's already there, and you can see it.
And thank you so much. And I think your film, again, just so powerful. You should, if anyone's listening, 100% go see it on the big screen, because there's just elements that will stick with you. It's gorgeous, it's powerful, and I think it is just something that's very important for us to process now, with everything that's going on, that there is a way out, and that there is a way of healing. And yeah, it's slow, but it'll get there.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for chatting with us. And thank you so much for listening. So if you enjoyed this episode and would like to hear more, don't forget to rate and subscribe to Film Ireland wherever you get your podcasts, and check out filmireland.ie for articles, events, news and reviews.